I have looked into the eyes of 3,000 dying people, and I can tell you exactly what they see in their final moments. They do not see their bank accounts. They do not see their expensive cars. They do not see the awards on their office walls. They see the empty chairs in the room and regret their whole life. My name is Thomas. For 35 years, I worked the graveyard shift at a private hospice for the wealthy. My patients were CEOs, oil tycoons, and celebrities. They spent their lives chasing a number. They thought that if they just made enough money, they would finally be happy. But the deathbed has a way of revealing the truth. Let me tell you about a patient named Robert. Robert was a business legend. He built a real estate empire from nothing. He worked 80 hours a week for 40 years. He told everyone he was doing it for his family. He said he wanted to give his children the life he never had. But in his final week, Robert offered me $10,000 cash to do one thing. He wanted me to call his son. He had not spoken to his son in 10 years because he was always too busy or in a meeting. I called the number. It went to voicemail. I called again. No answer. Robert died at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. He was surrounded by the best medical equipment money could buy. But he was holding my hand, a stranger's hand, because his family was gone. He traded his wife and children for a pile of money that he couldn't take with him. He was the poorest rich man I ever met. But Robert's mistake was obvious. The next patient, Mrs. Miller in room 2, made a mistake that was much more dangerous. She was waiting for a perfect day that never came, and you are probably waiting for it too. Mrs. Miller in room 304 was different from the billionaire. She wasn't greedy. She was just careful. She spent 60 years preparing for the future. She was the kind of woman who put plastic covers on her furniture to keep it new. She had a cabinet full of expensive china plates, but she ate dinner off paper plates every night. She was saving the good plates for a special occasion. She told me that she and her husband were finally going to travel to Italy after he retired. They saved money for 40 years for that trip. But life does not care about your plans. 2 weeks after her husband retired, Mrs. Miller got sick. Now she was lying in my ward. The trip to Italy was canceled. The expensive dresses she bought for the vacation were still in her closet with the price tags on. The fine china had never been used. She turned her head on the pillow and looked at me. Her voice was shaking. She said, "Thomas, I treated my life like a rehearsal. I thought the real show was starting later. I thought I had time." She grabbed my hand. "Don't save the good wine, Thomas. Drink it. Don't wait for the special occasion. Being alive is the special occasion." She died the next morning. She left behind a house full of beautiful, brand new things that she never enjoyed. Stop waiting for someday. Someday is a lie you tell yourself so you don't have to be brave today. If you want to call your brother, call him today. If you want to wear the expensive shoes, wear them today. Because Mrs. Miller taught me that the clock does not stop for your plans. But while Mrs. Miller waited too long to start living, the man in room 306 made the opposite mistake. He didn't wait. He ran. He ran so fast on the hamster wheel of his career that he missed his entire life. Mr. Vance in room 306 was a stranger to his own family. He was a corporate lawyer. He was sharp, aggressive, and successful. He told me proudly that he had paid for everything. He paid for the big house in the suburbs. He paid for his daughter's medical school. He paid for the weddings. He said, "Thomas, I sacrificed my life so they would never have to worry about money." He thought that writing checks was the same thing as being a father, but the bill always comes due. One Tuesday evening, his daughter came to visit him. She was polite. She was well dressed, but she did not sit close to the bed. She stood near the door. She checked her watch 3 times in 10 minutes. There was no warmth. There were no inside jokes. There was only an awkward silence. She treated him like a distant uncle she barely knew. When she left, Mr. Vance started to cry. It was the only time I saw him break. He whispered, "She looks at me like I am an ATM machine. I paid for her life, but I am not in it." He realized too late that children do not want your money. They want your time. You can always make more money, but you cannot make more time. If you are missing your son's baseball game to answer an email, stop. If you are skipping dinner to finish a report, stop. Because 20 years from now, the only people who will remember that you worked late are your children. Mr. Vance learned that lesson the hard way, but the tragedy in room 308 was different. Mr. Vance at least chose his own path. The woman in the next room spent 80 years walking a path she hated just to please other people. Elena in room 308 was the sweetest woman I ever met. Everyone loved her. She was a perfect mother, a dutiful wife, and a loyal church member. She smiled at everyone. But 3 days before she died, the smile dropped. She asked me to close the door. She looked around the room as if she was afraid someone was listening. She whispered, "Thomas, I feel like a fraud." Elena told me that she wanted to be a painter in Paris. She had a scholarship when she was 20, but her father told her that art was not a real job. He told her to marry a banker and settle down. So she did. She spent 50 years hosting dinner parties she hated. She spent 50 years laughing at jokes she didn't find funny. She spent 50 years living her father's version of success, not hers. She pointed to the family photos on the wall. She said, "That woman in the photos is not me. That is a character I played. I spent my whole life wearing a costume to make other people comfortable." She started to cry, not a soft cry, but a deep, angry sob. She realized that she had sacrificed her only life to please people who were already dead. There is no prize for being a good girl or a good boy if it costs you your soul. If you are studying law because your mother wants you to, stop. If you are staying in a loveless marriage because you're afraid of what the neighbors will say, stop. Your life belongs to you. Do not let someone else hold the pen. Elena died full of regret for the art she never created. But while Elena was too soft to stand up for herself, the man in room 310 had the opposite problem. He was hard. He was tough, and he let his pride destroy the only thing that actually mattered. George in room 310 was a fighter. He was a retired Army officer. He was disciplined, rigid, and proud. He told me on his first night that he had a son, but they hadn't spoken in 12 years. I asked him why. George sat up straight. He said, "He disrespected me, Thomas. He borrowed money and never paid it back. He owes me an apology. I will not speak to him until he admits he was wrong." George treated that apology like a debt that had to be collected. He held on to his anger like a shield. He waited for 12 years. He waited for the phone to ring. He waited for his son to come crawling back. But the phone never rang. On his final night, the anger finally broke. George looked at the ceiling and whispered, "I was right, Thomas. He did steal from me. I was right about everything." Then he closed his eyes and tears rolled down his cheeks. "I was right," he said, "but I would give anything to be wrong and have my son holding my hand right now." He won the argument, but he lost his son. I have learned a hard lesson in this job. The graveyard is full of people who were right. Being right is cold comfort when you are dying alone. If you are not talking to your sister because she insulted you, call her. If you are ignoring your father because he was unfair, call him. Swallow your pride. It is poison anyway. You don't have to forgive the action, but you have to save the relationship before the clock runs out. George learned that lesson too late, but the young man in room 312 didn't have an ego problem. He had a different addiction. He was physically in the room with his family, but he was never actually there. Michael in room 312 broke my heart the most. He was young, only 45. Cancer moves fast. He wasn't an angry man like George. He wasn't a workaholic like Mr. Vance. He loved his family, but he told me that he spent the last 10 years of his life looking down. He pointed to his iPhone on the nightstand. He looked at it with pure hatred. He said, "Thomas, that black mirror stole my life." Michael told me about his daughter's school play. He recorded the whole thing on his phone. He watched her sing through the screen to make sure the framing was perfect. But because he was looking at the screen, he missed looking at her with his own eyes. He missed the connection. He told me about date nights with his wife where he spent 20 minutes checking emails under the table. He said, "I was physically in the room, Thomas. My body was there, but my mind was somewhere else. I was a ghost in my own house." He has 10,000 photos in his cloud storage, but he has no real memories. He documented his life instead of living it. And now that he is dying, he would give anything to go back to just one Tuesday dinner and actually listen to his wife without checking a notification. Put the phone down. The world inside that screen is not real. The likes are not real. The emails can wait. The only thing that is real is the person sitting in front of you, and they will not be there forever. Michael learned that lesson when he ran out of time, but there is one final regret that I heard more than any other. It is the simplest one, but it is the one that haunts people for eternity. The final regret is the quietest one, but it is the one that echoes the loudest in the hallway. It is the regret of the unspoken word. William in room 314 was a good man. He was faithful. He was honest. But William was from a generation that did not talk about feelings. He thought that paying the mortgage was how you said, "I love you." He thought that fixing the car was how you said, "I care." He assumed his wife and children knew how he felt. But assumptions are dangerous. On his last day, his family stood around the bed. They were crying, but they weren't just crying because they were losing him. They were crying because they were unsure. His daughter held his hand and asked, "Dad, were you proud of me?" William tried to answer. He wanted to scream, "Yes, you are my greatest achievement," but he couldn't speak. The tubes were in his throat. The moment had passed. He died with a heart full of love that nobody knew about. Please do not make William's mistake. Do not assume they know. Tell them. If you love your mother, tell her today. If you are proud of your son, say the words. If you miss your friend, make the call. Love is not a noun. Love is a verb. It requires action. I have finished my shift now. The sun is coming up. My patients are gone, but you are still here. You still have time. Do not click on the next video. Do not scroll down, pick up your phone, call that person, even if it goes to voicemail, even if your voice shakes. Say what needs to be said, because a silent love is just as useful as a silent phone. It serves no one. My name is Thomas. I have seen the end of the road. Don't wait until you are in my ward to start living. If this video woke you up, subscribe to this channel. Let's stop dying with regrets and start living with purpose.